Let's simplify the rational expression negative 6n squared minus 4n plus 10 over negative 6n squared minus 46n minus 60. Okay, we're going to simplify this by seeing if we can factor the numerator and the denominator. The first thing I notice about the numerator, this negative 6n squared minus 4n plus 10, is that all three terms have a coefficient that's divisible by 2. Okay, 2 is a common factor. And it's good practice if this first number here, the number attached to the squared term, right, n squared, if that is a negative, factor out a negative with it. Okay, so instead of taking out just 2, I'm going to factor out a negative 2. Okay, so factoring out negative 2, I'm dividing it out. Negative 6n squared divided by negative 2 is positive 3n squared. Negative 4n divided by negative 2 would give me positive 2n. And 10 divided by negative 2 would give me a negative 5. Okay, so we have negative 2 times 3n squared plus 2n minus 5. Okay, now we need to factor 3n squared plus 2n minus 5. Since there's not an understood 1 in front of this n squared, it's a 3 instead, we have to factor this with the AC method using the full set of steps. So I'm going to start off by saying I need two numbers that multiply together to be negative 15. Okay, negative 15. That's the product of 3 times negative 5. So they need to multiply together to be negative 15, but they need to add together to be the middle number 2. Okay, so I'll start listing out numbers. 1 and negative 15. Those would multiply together to be negative 15. Those add up to negative 14. I need them to add up to 2. 3 times negative 5 would give me negative 15. 3 plus negative 5 is negative 2. That's not quite what I want. I need this to be a positive, not a negative, so I'll flip my signs around. Negative 3 times positive 5 is negative 15. Negative 3 plus 5 is a positive 2. So I'm going to use negative 3 and 5. So what I'm going to use that for is to split that 2n term into 2, right? This 2n splits into negative 3n plus 5n. If I were to combine those like terms, I would be back at 2n. Okay, and also don't forget that we are technically going to be bringing down this 2. This negative 2, I should say. Okay, so now I'm going to group together the first two terms and the last two terms here. And look, I'm going to remove the parentheses for now. We'll put the 2 back in a second, the negative 2 back in a second. Okay, 3n squared minus 3n. They both have a 3 in common. They're both divisible by 3. And they both have an n in common. So that will become 3n. Now let's divide 3n out. If I divided this by 3n, I'd be left with 1n, or just n. And if I divided this by 3n, I'd be left with negative 1. Okay, and then for here, these have a common factor of 5, a positive 5. If I divide u by 5, I'm left with just 1n, or n. And if I divide u by 5 here, I would end up with a negative 1. Now again, let's not forget, negative 2 has been hanging outside the whole time. Okay, finally, I have n minus 1 as my common factor. If I divided this by n minus 1, I'd be left with 3n. And if I divided that by n minus 1, I'd be left with 5, positive 5. Right? In other words, 3n and the 5 go there and there. Okay, so we have n minus 1 times 3n plus 5, but let's not forget the negative 2 hanging out on the outside. So there we go. That's the numerator. Okay, now we need to factor the denominator. Okay, so again, I'm going to use the AC method. First thing I'm going to do is check to see if there's a common factor. Oh wait, I'm writing down the wrong one. I wrote down the numerator again. Negative 46n minus 60. Okay, so these three are all divisible by 2. And since this is a negative, I'm going to factor out a negative 2. Negative 2. Divide each term by negative 2. To figure out what goes in the blank here, negative 6n squared divided by negative 2 is positive 3n squared. Negative 46n divided by negative 2 would be a positive 23n. Negative 60 divided by 2 is going to be a positive 30. Okay, so we have negative 2 times 3n squared plus 23n plus 30. Okay, let's multiply together. 3 times 30, we get 90. So I really just need to find two numbers that multiply together to be 90, but add together to be 23. Okay, so 1 and 90, that's 91. That's not good. We could do 2 and 45. That's 47, not good. We could do 3 and 30. That'd be 33. Not so good. We could do 5 and 18. There we go. Those add up to 23. So I'm going to use 5 and 18 to split 23n into two terms. 5n plus 18n. Don't forget to bring down the 30, right? So bring this down, split this into 2. Okay. And then we will group. I'm not forgetting about the negative 2 on the outside. Just going to worry about that later. 3n squared plus 5n have a common factor of just n. If I divide that by n, I'm left with 3n. If I divide this by n, I'm left with positive 5. 18n plus 30, those are both divisible by 6, a positive 6. So if I divide you by 6, I'm left with 3n. 18 divided by 6 is 3, so we have 3n. 30 divided by 6 is 5. Okay, let's not forget, we got negative 2 hanging out here. Okay, so finally, 3n plus 5 is a common factor among these two terms. N plus 6 are the terms hanging on the outside there. And don't forget about the negative 2. Okay, so negative 2, 3n plus 5, n plus 6. All right, that's getting a little crowded here. But no matter, we're basically there. Maybe I'll draw some lines to help separate some stuff here. Close enough, right? Okay, so now let's see what cancels. Negative 2 and negative 2. 3n plus 5 over 3n plus 5. I'm left with n minus 1 over n plus 6. Notice I'm not putting parentheses. I don't need to, right? There's only one factor on the top, and there's only one factor on the bottom. There's no need to write the parentheses.